Okay, today is the 14th of August, 2010, and we come to Majjhima Nikaya Sutta 64, Malunkyaputta, the greater discourse to Malunkyaputta. This sutta is also another very important sutta. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There he addressed the monks thus, "Monks, Venerable Sir," they replied. The Blessed One said, "Monks, do you remember the 5 lower fetters as taught by me?" When this was said, the Venerable Malunkyaputta replied, "Venerable Sir, I remember the 5 lower fetters as taught by the Blessed One." But Malunkyaputta, in what way do you remember the 5 lower fetters as taught by me? Venerable Sir, I remember identity view as a lower fetter taught by the Blessed One. I remember doubt as a lower fetter taught by the Blessed One. I remember adherence to rules and observances as a lower fetter taught by the Blessed One. I remember sensual desire as a lower fetter taught by the Blessed One. I remember ill will as a lower fetter taught by the Blessed One. It is in this way, Venerable Sir, that I remember the 5 lower fetters as taught by the Blessed One. And the Buddha said, "Malunkyaputta, to whom do you remember my having taught these 5 lower fetters in that way? Would not the wanderers of other sects confute you with the simile of the infant? For a young tender infant lying prone does not even have the notion identity. So how could identity view arise in him? Yet the underlying tendency to identity view lies within him. A young tender infant lying prone does not even have the notion teachings. So how could doubt about teachings arise in him? Yet the underlying tendency to doubt lies within him. A young tender infant lying prone does not even have the notion rules. So how could adherence to rules and observances arise in him? Yet the underlying tendency to adhere to rules and observances lies within him. A young tender infant lying prone does not even have the notion sensual pleasure. So how could sensual desire arise in him? Yet the underlying tendency to sensual lust lies within him. A young tender infant lying prone does not even have the notion beings. So how could ill will towards beings arise in him? Yet the underlying tendency to ill will lies within him. Would not the wanderers of other sects confute you with the simile of the infant? Stop here for a moment. So when Malunkyaputta quoted the 5 lower fetters, the Buddha said, if you say that is the 5 lower fetters, then wanderers of other sects, external sect ascetics, can prove you wrong, confute you with the simile of the infant, saying that the infant, a young infant, does not have these 5 lower fetters. Yet the tendency to have these 5 lower fetters is there. Later the Buddha explains that by fetter he means it is a fetter only if it habitually obsesses a person. Thereupon the Venerable Ananda said, "It is time, Blessed One, it is a time, Sublime One, for the Blessed One to teach the 5 lower fetters. Having heard it from the Blessed One, the monks will remember it. Then listen, Ananda, and attend closely to what I shall say." "Yes, Venerable Sir," the Venerable Ananda replied. The Blessed One said, "Hear, Ananda, an untaught ordinary person who has no regard for noble ones and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, who has no regard for true men and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, abides with the mind obsessed and enslaved by identity view, and he does not understand as it actually is the escape from the arisen identity view. And when that identity view has become habitual and is uneradicated in him, it is a lower fetter. Similarly, he abides with the mind obsessed and enslaved by doubt, by adherence to rules and observances, by sensual lust, by ill will, and he does not understand the escape as it actually is from the arisen fetters. And when that fetter has become habitual and uneradicated in him, it is a lower factor. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha explains, it is a factor when the mind is obsessed by these factors, and it is habitual. So if a person is habitually obsessed by these 5 things, then it becomes a factor for him. A well-taught, noble disciple, Aryan, who has regard for noble ones and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma, who has regard for true men and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma, does not abide with the mind obsessed and enslaved by identity view. He understands as it actually is, the escape from the arisen identity view, and identity view together with the underlying tendency to it is abandoned in him. Similarly, he does not abide with the mind obsessed and enslaved by doubt, by adherence to rules and observances, by sensual lust, by ill will, and he understands as it actually is the escape from the arisen factor, and the factor together with the underlying tendency to it is abandoned in him. Stop here for a moment. So for the Aryan disciple, he understands the Dhamma, the Aryan Dhamma, the Dhamma of true men, and these 5 lower factors is abandoned. Even the underlying tendency to it is abandoned. There is a path, Ananda, a way to the abandoning of the 5 lower factors, that anyone without coming to that path, to that way, shall know or see or abandon the 5 lower factors. This is not possible. Just as when there is a great tree standing possessed of hardwood, it is not possible that anyone shall cut out its hardwood without cutting through its bark and sapwood. So too there is a path. There is a path, Ananda, a way to the abandoning of the 5 lower factors, that someone, by coming to that path, to that way, shall know and see and abandon the 5 lower factors. This is possible. Just as when there is a great tree standing possessed of hardwood, it is possible that someone shall cut out its hardwood by cutting through its bark and sapwood. So too there is a path for the abandoning of the 5 lower factors. Stop here. So here the Buddha says, just as if you want to extract the hardwood of a tree, which is at the core of the tree, the center of the tree, you have to cut through the bark and the sapwood, the softwood, before you can take out the hardwood. So in the same way, the Buddha says, to abandon the 5 lower factors, there is a specific path. And if you don't walk that specific path, it is impossible to abandon the 5 lower factors. Suppose, Ananda, the river Ganges were full of water right up to the brim, so that crows could drink from it. And then a feeble man came thinking, by swimming across the stream with my arms, I shall get safely across to the further shore of this river Ganges. Yet he would not be able to get safely across. So too, when the Dhamma is being taught to someone for the cessation of identity, if his mind does not enter into it and acquire confidence, steadiness and decision, then he can be regarded like the feeble man. Suppose, Ananda, the river Ganges were full of water right up to the brim, so that crows could drink from it. And then a strong man came, thinking, by swimming across the stream with my arms, I shall get safely across to the further shore of this river Ganges. And he would be able to get safely across. So too, when the Dhamma is being taught to someone for the cessation of identity, if his mind enters into it and acquires confidence, steadiness and decision, then he can be regarded as like the strong man. Sorry for a moment. So here the Buddha says, just like a weak man cannot swim across the Ganges because it is quite a wide river, but a strong man can. So in the same way, the Buddha says, when the Dhamma is taught, if a person does not pay full attention and if the mind does not enter into it and acquire confidence, steadiness and decision, then he can be regarded like the feeble man. He cannot achieve what he aims to do. Whereas the other person If he listens to the Dhamma and the mind enters into it and acquires confidence, steadiness and decision, then he can be regarded like the strong man who can swim across the river. So listening to the Dhamma with careful attention, full attention, and understanding the Dhamma is very important. And what Ananda is the path, the way to the abandoning of the 5 lower fetters. Here, with seclusion from objects of attachment, with the abandoning of unwholesome states, with the complete tranquilization of bodily inertia, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with delight and pleasure born of seclusion. Whatever exists therein of material form, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, he sees those states as impermanent, as suffering, as a disease, as a tumor, as a bhab, as a calamity, as an affliction, as alien, as disintegrating, as void, as not self. He turns his mind away from those states and directs it towards the deathless element thus. This is the peaceful, this is the sublime, that is the stilling of all volitions, the relinquishing of all attachments, the destruction of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. Standing upon that, he attains the destruction of the taints. But if he does not attain the destruction of the taints, then because of that desire for the Dhamma, that delight in the Dhamma, with the destruction of the 5 lower fetters, he becomes one due to reappear spontaneously in the pure abodes, and there attain final Nibbana without ever returning from that world. This is the path, the way to the abandoning of the 5 lower fetters. Stop here for a moment. So here, the path which is absolutely necessary to the abandonment of the 5 lower fetters starts with the first jhana. The Buddha says when a person attains the first jhana, then he can see that the 5 aggregates, basically the body and the mind, are impermanent, suffering, a disease, a tumor, a bhab, a calamity, etc. Then he becomes dispassionate and relinquishes all craving towards the body and the mind, basically the self. Then only he can attain Nibbana. And if he does not, then because of the understanding of the Dhamma, he will become an Anagamin and be reborn in the Suddhavasa heavens, the pure abodes, and from there attain Nibbana. Again, with the stilling of applied and sustained thought, a monk enters upon and abides in the second jhana. Again, with the fading away as well of delight, a monk enters upon and abides in the third jhana. So this second jhana also is the path to the abandoning of the 5 lower fetters. The third jhana also is the path to the abandonment of the 5 lower fetters. Again, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, a monk enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure and purity of mindfulness and equanimity. Whatever exists therein of material form, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, he sees those states as impermanent, as suffering, etc. He turns his mind away from those states and directs it towards the deathless element. This again is the path, the way to the abandoning of the 5 lower fetters. Again, with the complete surmounting of perceptions of form, with the disappearance of perceptions of sensory impact, with non-attention to perceptions of diversity, aware that space is infinite, a monk enters upon and abides in the base of infinite space. Whatever exists therein of feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, he sees those states as impermanent, as suffering, etc. He turns his mind away from those states and directs it towards the deathless element. This again is the path, the way to the abandoning of the 5 lower fetters. Again, by completely surmounting the base of infinite space, aware that consciousness is infinite, a monk enters upon and abides in the base of infinite consciousness. Similarly, whatever exists therein of feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness, he sees those states as impermanent, as suffering, etc., and turns his mind away from those states. This is the path, the way to the abandoning of the 5 lower fetters. Again, by completely surmounting the base of infinite consciousness, aware that there is nothing, a monk enters upon and abides in the base of nothingness. Whatever exists therein of feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness, he sees those states as impermanent, as suffering, as a disease, etc. He turns his mind away from those states and directs it towards the deathless element. Standing upon that, he attains the destruction of the taints. But if he does not attain the destruction of the taints, then because of that desire for the Dhamma, that delight in the Dhamma, with the destruction of the 5 lower fetters, he becomes one due to reappear spontaneously in the pure abodes, and there attain final Nibbana without ever returning from that world. This is the path, this is the way to the abandoning of the 5 lower fetters. And Malunkyaputta, this Venerable Ananda said, Venerable Sir, if this is the path, the way to the abandoning of the 5 lower fetters, then how is it that some monks here are said to gain liberation by mind and some are said to gain liberation by wisdom? And the Buddha said, the difference here, Ananda, is in the faculties, I say. That is what the Blessed One said. The Venerable Ananda was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So this last part, the Buddha confirms that there are 2 types of liberation. One is liberation by mind, and another one is liberation by wisdom. But basically they are the same. It is not that the method is different. The method is both are the same. That is basically the Noble Eightfold Path. But the difference, why one gains liberation by mind, another one gains liberation by wisdom, the Buddha says, is because there's a difference in their faculties. You find from the Sutta that those arahants who were liberated during meditation, like the Buddha himself, they are said to be liberated by mind. And there are 2 suttas which talks about the 2 types of arahants. One sutta says there is an arahant liberated by mind. Later I can give you the sutta reference. There's one liberated by mind and the other is liberated by wisdom. And there is another sutta that says there are 2 types of arahants. One who is 2 ways liberated or both ways liberated, and another one is liberated by wisdom. So this means the monk who is liberated by mind is also the monk who is 2 ways liberated. When a monk is 2 ways liberated, it means he is liberated by mind and by wisdom. Because without wisdom, you cannot attain liberation. It's just that liberation by mind, actually from the suttas we find, are those who meditate using the strength of mind. They meditate and then after that they attain enlightenment like the Buddha. And there are others like Venerable Sariputta. He was listening to a discourse by the Buddha, and during the hearing of the discourse, he understood, and he became arahant, became liberated. So this liberation by wisdom is not during meditation. But somebody like Venerable Sariputta, you can see in Majjhima Nikaya Sutta 111, he has all the jhanas. All the jhanas. It's not that people who are liberated by wisdom do not have jhanas. There is a commentarial idea. A lot of things in the commentaries contradict the suttas. So here from this sutta, what is very important is that to attain the abandoning of the 5 lower fetters. When you abandon the 5 lower fetters, you become an anagamin, a 3rd fruit Arya. So here you can see, without the jhanas mentioned here, it is impossible to abandon the 5 lower fetters and become an anagamin. So there are some other suttas where the Buddha says, for anagamin, attainment of anagamin, 3rd fruit, and arahanthood, 4th fruit, you need the 4 jhanas. Perfect samadhi, perfect concentration in the Buddha's teachings are the 4 jhanas. And for the others, like Sakadagamin, the 2nd fruit, you don't need perfect concentration. You don't need the 4 jhanas, but you may need you may need to get the 1st jhana or the 2nd jhana or the 3rd jhana before you can become a Sakadagamin. But for the third and fourth, you need 4 jhanas. So because of this point, I say this sutta is very important, that it's impossible to become an anagamin or an arahant without the jhanas. Now we come to Sutta 65, Bhaddali Sutta. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There he addressed the monks thus, "Monks, noble sir," they replied. The Blessed One said, "Monks, I eat at a single session. By so doing, I am free from illness and affliction, and I enjoy health, strength, and a comfortable abiding. Come, monks, eat at a single session. By so doing, you too will be free from illness and affliction, and you will enjoy health, strength, and a comfortable abiding." When this was said, the Venerable Bhaddali told the Blessed One, "Venerable Sir, I am not willing to eat at a single session, for if I were to do so, I might have worry and anxiety about it." Then the Buddha said, "Then Bhaddali, eat one part there where you are invited, and bring away one part to eat. By eating in that way, you will maintain yourself." "Venerable Sir, I am not willing to eat in that way either, for if I were to do so, I might also have worry and anxiety about it." Then when this training precept was being made known by the Blessed One, the Venerable Bhaddali publicly declared in the Sangha of monks his unwillingness to undertake the training. Then the Venerable Bhaddali did not present himself to the Blessed One for the whole of that 3-month period of the rains, as he did not fulfill the training in the teacher's dispensation. Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha, at this time of the sutta, he wanted the monks to eat only 1 meal a day. And you can see from here, the Buddha says he eats at a single session or a single sitting, and eats 1 meal a day, and he's healthy. And there are some monks like this Venerable Bhaddali, they were not willing to follow this precept, and so in front of everyone, he declared his unwillingness to follow the Buddha's instructions. So because of that, he avoided the Buddha for the 3 months of the Vasa, the rains period, rains retreat. Initially, the Buddha did not make this precept, and the monks could eat as many times as they wanted. Later, the Buddha said, instead of 3 meals, they should only take 2 meals. And then later, he said only 1 meal, like here. But because of monks like this, Venerable Bhaddali are not willing to eat 1 meal, he said, you can eat your main meal, and then you can take part of it. If you want, you can keep part of that food to eat again. But it must be in the morning, between dawn and noon. Dawn is when the sun arises, and noon is when the sun is at the highest point. In Malaysia, it will be like 7 a.m. until 1 p.m. So even then, this Venerable Bhaddali was not willing to follow this training to eat only in the morning. Now on that occasion, a number of monks were engaged in making up a robe for the Blessed One, thinking, with his robe completed at the end of the 3 months of the rains, the Blessed One will set out wandering. Then the Venerable Bhaddali went to those monks and exchanged greetings with them. And when this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he sat down at one side. When he had done so, they said to him, "Friend Bhaddali, this robe is being made up for the Blessed One. With his robe completed at the end of the 3 months of the rains, the Blessed One will set out wandering. Please, friend Bhaddali, give proper attention to your declaration. Do not let it become more difficult for you later on." Stop here for a moment. So here, these monks were very good lah. They were very considerate. They told Venerable Bhaddali, please, friend, don't make things difficult for you later on. In other words, they are hinting to him to go and apologize to the Buddha. Otherwise, this will be an obstruction for him later. If he still wants to continue as a monk, this will be a big obstruction. Yes, friends, he replied. And he went to the Blessed One. And after paying homage to him, he sat down at one side and said, Venerable Sir, a transgression overcame me, in that like a fool, confused and blundering, when the training precept was being made known by the Blessed One, I publicly declared in the Sangha of monks my unwillingness to undertake the training. Venerable Sir, may the Blessed One forgive my transgression, seen as such, for the sake of restraint in the future. And the Buddha said, surely, Bhaddali, a transgression overcame you, in that like a fool, confused and blundering, when the training precept was being made known by me, you publicly declared in the Sangha of monks your unwillingness to undertake the training. Bhaddali, this circumstance was not recognized by you. The Blessed One is living at Savatthi, and the Blessed One will know me thus. The monk named Bhaddali is one who does not fulfill the training in the teacher's dispensation. This circumstance was not recognized by you. Also, this circumstance was not recognized by you. Many monks who have taken up residence at Savatthi for the rains, and they too will know me thus. The monk named Bhaddali is one who does not fulfill the training in the teacher's dispensation. This circumstance too was not recognized by you. Also, this circumstance was not recognized by you. Many bhikkhunis have taken up residence at Savatthi for the rains. Many nuns have taken up residence at Savatthi for the rains, and they too will know me thus. The monk named Bhaddali is one who does not fulfill the training in the teacher's dispensation. This circumstance too was not recognized by you. Also, this circumstance was not recognized by you. Many men lay followers, many women lay followers are staying at Savatthi, and they too will know me thus. The monk named Bhaddali is one who does not fulfill the training in the teacher's dispensation. This circumstance too was not recognized by you. Also, this circumstance was not recognized by you. Many recluses and Brahmins of other sects have taken up residence at Savatthi for the rains, and they too will know me thus. The monk named Bhaddali, an elder disciple of the recluse Gotama, is one who does not fulfill the training in the teacher's dispensation. This circumstance too was not recognized by you. Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha was admonishing him after he confessed his wrongdoing. The Buddha said, you did not foresee that you will have a very bad reputation. The Buddha will see you as one who refuses to train in the precepts, and all the monks and the nuns and all the men lay followers and women followers all will recognize you as somebody, as one of the monks who does not comply with the Buddha's instructions, and even external ascetics will also know you. In other words, you get a very bad reputation. All this was not seen by you. Second time he confessed, I said, Venerable Sir, a transgression overcame me, in that like a fool, confused and blundering, when the training precept was being made known by the Blessed One, I publicly declared in the Sangha of monks my unwillingness to undertake the training. Venerable Sir, may the Blessed One forgive my transgression, seen as such, for the sake of restraint in the future. Surely, Bhaddali, a transgression overcame you, in that like a fool, confused and blundering, when the training precept was being made known by me, you publicly declared in the Sangha of monks your unwillingness to undertake the training. What do you think, Bhaddali? Suppose a monk here were one liberated in both ways. And I told him, come monk, be a plank for me to walk across the mud. Would he walk across himself, or would he dispose his body otherwise, or would he say no? No, Venerable Sir. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha, when he confessed the second time, the Buddha still did not accept. The Buddha said, suppose there were an Arahant liberated in both ways. That means mind liberated Arahant. And I told him, sleep in the mud for me to walk across your body so that my feet don't get dirty. Would this Arahant refuse to do so and walk across himself? Or would he turn his body another direction? Or would he say no? And then Venerable Bhaddali said no. In other words, he knows when the Buddha will ask the Arahant to even sleep in the mud for him to use as a carpet to walk across, that Arahant will quickly do so. This simile given here, we know was used by later monks to create this story of the Dipankara Buddha. Remember this story? They say long time ago, the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, was ascetic by the name of Sumedha, and he, at that time, this ascetic Sumedha, he met the Buddha Dipankara, and the Buddha Dipankara was so, awesome. So he was so impressed by the Buddha Dipankara that he willingly lay in the mud for the Dipankara Buddha to step across his body, to walk across the mud. And then, according to this story, after that, he altogether he met 24 Buddhas before he became the Buddha Sakyamuni. You can see that story was extracted from here, but that story is a false story. It was created by later monks. So in the suttas, the Buddha said he looked into the past whole night. He didn't sleep. He looked throughout the night, and he looked back 91 world cycles. He said he only saw 6 Sammasambuddhas. There's no such thing as 24 or 28 or 88 Buddhas. It's only 6 Buddhas in the suttas. There's a lot of wrong views being taught nowadays. So unless you are familiar with the suttas, you don't know all this. So then the Buddha continued. What do you think, Bhaddali? Suppose a monk here were one liberated by wisdom. And then I told him, come monk, be a plank for me to walk across the mud. Would he walk across himself, or would he dispose his body otherwise, or would he say no? Again, Venerable Bhaddali said no. Similarly, the Buddha quoted the body witness, Kaya Sakin, one attained to view, Ditipata, one liberated by faith, Sada Vimutta, Dhamma follower, faith follower. And I told him, come monk, be a plank for me to walk across the mud. Would he walk across himself, or would he dispose his body otherwise, or would he say no? No, Venerable Sir. So here the Buddha is talking about all the various types of Arya. If a person has become an Arya, he has unshakable faith in the Buddha. He worships the Buddha. And if the Buddha were to ask him to sleep in the mud for the Buddha to use as a carpet to walk across, he would not hesitate. What do you think, Bhaddali? Were you on that occasion one liberated in both ways, or one liberated by wisdom, or a body witness, or one attained to view, or one liberated by faith, or a Dhamma follower, or a faith follower? No, Venerable Sir. Bhaddali, on that occasion, were you not an empty, hollow wrongdoer? Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha said, when I gave the instruction and you refused, you publicly repudiated me in front of everybody. At that time, were you an Arya? He said, no. And Buddha said, at that time, you were just an empty, hollow wrongdoer. Yes, Venerable Sir. Venerable Sir, transgression overcame me in that like a fool, confused and blundering. When the training precept was being made known by the Blessed One, I publicly declared in the Sangha of monks my unwillingness to undertake the training. Venerable Sir, may the Blessed One forgive my transgression, seen as such for the sake of restraint in the future. Surely, Bhaddali, a transgression overcame you in that like a fool, confused and blundering. When the training precept was being made known by me, you publicly declared in the Sangha of monks your unwillingness to undertake the training. But since you see your transgression as such and make amends in accordance with the Dhamma, we forgive you. For it is growth in the noble one's discipline when one sees one's transgression as such and makes amends in accordance with the Dhamma by undertaking restraint for the future. I stop here for a moment. So you see, only after the 3rd time he asked for forgiveness, then only the Buddha forgave him. Here, Bhaddali, some monk does not fulfill the training in the teacher's dispensation. He considers thus, suppose I were to resort to a secluded resting place, the forest, or the root of a tree, or a mountain, or a ravine, or a hillside cave, a charnel ground, a jungle thicket, an open space, a heap of straw. Perhaps I might realize a superhuman state, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the Aryans, noble ones. He resorts to some secluded resting place. While he lives there, thus withdrawn, the teacher censures him. Wise companions in the holy life who have made investigation censure him. God censure him, and he censures himself. Being censured in this way by the teacher, by wise companions in the holy life, by gods and by himself, he realizes no superhuman state, no distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. Why is that? That is how it is with one who does not fulfill the training in the teacher's dispensation. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying, suppose a monk, he wants to meditate very hard. He goes to a secluded place, lives alone, and he practices very hard. But he cannot make any progress. Why? Because he does not fulfill the training. He does not fulfill the training in the sila, moral conduct, the precepts, the concentration and the wisdom. And because of that, the teacher has a bad impression of him, censures him, and other monks also criticize him, and he himself will criticize himself, and the gods who can read his mind will also censure him, criticize him. So because of this conscience pricking him, his mind cannot be happy and attain concentration. From there, he cannot attain these supernormal states, superhuman states. Here, Bhaddali, some monk does fulfill the training in the teacher's dispensation. He considers thus: suppose I were to resort to a secluded resting place, the forest or the root of a tree, or a mountain, a ravine, a hillside cave, a charnel ground, a jungle thicket, an open space, a heap of straw. Perhaps I might realize a superhuman state, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. He resorts to some secluded resting place. While he lives thus withdrawn, the teacher does not censure him. Wise companions in the holy life who have made investigation do not censure him. Gods do not censure him, and he does not censure himself. Being uncensured in this way by the teacher, by wise companions in the holy life, by gods and by himself, he realizes a superhuman state, a distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. Stop here for a moment. So here the converse, if a monk complies with all the training in the precepts, concentration and wisdom, then he has no remorse. Nobody censures him or criticizes him, and he does not criticize himself. And so he can attain what he wants to attain because he has no remorse, he is full of happiness, full of gladness, then the mind calms down. Quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, he enters upon and abides in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought, with delight and pleasure born of seclusion. Why is that? That is how it is with one who fulfills the training in the teacher's dispensation. With the stilling of applied and sustained thought, he enters upon and abides in the second jhana. Similarly, with the fading away as well of delight, he enters upon and abides in the third jhana. With the abandoning of pleasure and pain, he enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana. Why is that? That is how it is with one who fulfills the training in the teacher's dispensation. When his concentrated mind is thus purified and bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady and attained to imperturbability, he directs it to the knowledge of the recollection of past lives. Thus with the aspects and particulars, he recollects his manifold past lives. Why is that? That is how it is with one who fulfills the training in the teacher's dispensation. When his concentrated mind is thus purified and bright, attained to imperturbability, he directs it to the knowledge of the passing away and reappearance of beings. Thus with the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, he understands how beings pass on according to their actions. Why is that? That is how it is with one who fulfills the training in the teacher's dispensation. When his concentrated mind is thus purified and bright, attained to imperturbability, he directs it to the knowledge of the destruction of the taints. He understands as it actually is, this is suffering. He understands as it actually is, this is the origin of suffering, the way leading to the cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering and the taints. When he knows and sees thus, his mind is liberated from the taint of sensual desire, from the taint of being, and from the taint of ignorance. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge, it is liberated. He understands birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. Why is that? That is how it is with one who fulfills the training in the teacher's dispensation. So here the Buddha is saying, when a monk fulfills the training laid out by the Buddha, then he can attain the 4 jhanas. And after he has attained the 4 jhanas, you see here, the mind is purified and bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability. Because the mind has come to that state, then when he directs it to the recollection of past lives, he is able to do so. And when he recollects it when he directs it to the knowledge of the passing away and reappearance of beings, he is also able to do so. And thirdly, when he directs it to the knowledge of the 4 noble truths and the asavas, then he also understands and attains liberation. These later, the 3 knowledges is only possible because the mind has attained the 4th jhana. After the 4th jhana, it is just right because it is purified and bright, etc. Thereupon the Venerable Bhaddali asks, Venerable Sir, what is the cause, what is the reason why they take action against some monk here by repeatedly admonishing him? What is the cause, what is the reason why they do not take such action against some monk here by repeatedly admonishing him? Here, Bhaddali, some monk is a constant offender with many offenses. When he is corrected by the monks, he prevaricates, leads the talk aside, shows disturbance, hate and bitterness. He does not proceed rightly, he does not comply, he does not clear himself, he does not say, let me act so that the Sangha will be satisfied. Monks, taking account of this matter, think it would be good if the Venerable Ones examine this monk in such a way that this litigation against him is not settled too quickly, and the monks examine the monk in such a way that the litigation against him is not settled too quickly. So stop here for a moment. So this monk is not only a constant offender, but when he is advised by other monks to correct his behavior, he prevaricates, he talks about some other things, and he is disturbed, he gets angry, and does not comply with what they say. He does not act in a way that the other monks are happy. So because of that, they keep they repeatedly find fault with him. I guess this Venerable Bhaddali must be a monk like this. So other monks constantly find fault with him. That's why he is not happy, complaining the Buddha, why these monks are always constantly finding fault with me? And then the Buddha says here again, but here some monk is a constant offender with many offenses. When he is corrected by the monks, he does not prevaricate, lead the talk aside, or show disturbance, hate and bitterness. He proceeds rightly, he complies, he clears himself, he says, let me so act that the Sangha will be satisfied. Monks, taking account of this matter, think it would be good if the Venerable Ones examine this monk in such a way that this litigation against him is settled quickly, and the monks examine that monk in such a way that the litigation against him is settled quickly. Stop here for a moment. So this another type of constant offender, he is advised by other monks to change, and he listens to them. He does not get angry, he does not lead the talk aside, and he complies with what they advise him. And so because of that, the other monks have sympathy for him and try to settle his case quickly. Here some monk is a chance offender without many offenses. When he is corrected by the monks, he prevaricates, leads the talk aside, or show disturbance, hate and bitterness, etc. And the monks examine that monk in such a way that the litigation against him is not settled too quickly. But here some monk is a chance offender without many offences. When he is corrected by the monks, he does not prevaricate or lead the talk aside or show disturbance, etc. And the monks examine that monk in such a way that the litigation against him is settled quickly. Stop here for a moment. So this one is not a constant offender, but a chance offender. And the other monks, when they advise him to change, if the monk is willing to change, then they sympathize with him and quickly settle his case. But if he is the type who's hard to correct, then they constantly find fault with him. Here some monk progresses by a measure of faith and love. In this case, the monks consider thus. Friends, this monk progresses by a measure of faith and love. Let him not lose that measure of faith and love, as he may if we take action against him by repeatedly admonishing him. Suppose a man had only one eye, then his friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives would guard his eye, thinking, let him not lose his one eye. So too, some monk progresses by a measure of faith and love, and they think, let him not lose that measure of faith and love, as he may if we take action against him by repeatedly admonishing him. This is the cause, this is the reason why they take action against some monk here by repeatedly admonishing him. This is the cause, this is the reason why they do not take such action against some monk here by repeatedly admonishing him. So this last type of monk is new, but he has faith and he has love. So because of that, the other monks sympathize with him. Venerable Sir, what is the cause, what is the reason why there were previously fewer training rules and more monks became established in final knowledge? What is the cause, what is the reason why there are now more training rules and fewer monks become established in final knowledge? Stop here for a moment. So here he's asking why formerly there were less precepts made by the Buddha and there were more arahants. But nowadays there are so many precepts and we have less arahants. And the Buddha said, that is how it is, Bhaddali. When beings are deteriorating and the true Dhamma is disappearing, then there are more training rules and fewer monks become established in final knowledge. The teacher does not make the training rule for disciples until certain things that are the basis for taints become manifest here in the Sangha. But when certain things that are the basis for taints become manifest here in the Sangha, then the teacher makes known the training rule for disciples in order to ward off those things that are the basis for taints. Those things that are the basis for taints do not become manifest here in the Sangha until the Sangha has reached greatness. But when the Sangha has reached greatness, then those things that are the basis for taints become manifest here in the Sangha. And then the teacher makes known the training rule for disciples in order to ward off those things that are the basis for taints. Those things that are the basis for taints do not become manifest here in the Sangha until the Sangha has reached the acme of worldly gain, the acme of fame, the acme of great learning, the acme of long-standing renown. But when the Sangha has reached the acme of long-standing renown, etc., then those things that are the basis for taints become manifest here in the Sangha, and then the teacher makes known the training rule for disciples in order to ward off those things that are the basis for taints. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha answers that after some time the Sangha becomes very well established and they become famous and they have reached the peak. Then when they have reached the peak, then problems start to appear. Here the Buddha says the taints become manifest. Here refers to what Chinese call fan now, all the uncontrolled mental outflows. That's my translation for taints, the asavas, uncontrolled mental outflows. That means the mind, they use the mind a lot. Instead of meditating and attain the jhanas, the monks, after some time, they become lax. After the Sangha has reached fame, the the peak, then the Sangha of monks, the Buddha and the Sangha of monks have become very famous. Then they get a lot of offerings and all that. Then the monks start to relax, and you get bad eggs, the monks, people coming into monkhood for the wrong reasons. They wear the robe for the wrong reasons, and then they don't practice. They don't practice. They don't practice. Their aim in wearing the robe is not to practice the holy life, and they are greedy for offerings and greedy for fame and all that. So that's when the taints become manifest. All this using their mind too much, and beings are deteriorating, and the true Dhamma starts to disappear, because these monks, instead of practicing, meditating very hard and disciplining their mind and not using their mind in thinking, they start to think a lot, and then they have wrong interpretation of the Dhamma. When they have wrong interpretation of the Dhamma, then the true Dhamma starts to disappear. It's like nowadays, you have so many different interpretations of the Buddha's teachings. Instead of sticking to the original Buddha's teachings in the 4 Nikayas, plus a few books of the 5th Nikaya, they go and follow other books, like we have the Mahayana and the Hinayana books. So all this causes the true Dhamma to disappear. And when this starts to happen, then the Buddha starts to make more and more rules. And then you get less and less arahants in the world. And the Buddha said, there were few of you, Bhaddali, when I taught the Dhamma through the simile of the young thoroughbred colt. Do you remember that, Bhaddali? No, Venerable Sir. To what reason do you attribute that? Venerable Sir, I have long been one who did not fulfill the training in the teacher's dispensation. And the Buddha said, that is not the only cause or the only reason, but rather, by encompassing your mind with my mind, I have long known you thus. When I am teaching that Dhamma, this misguided man does not heed it, does not give it attention, does not engage it with all his mind, does not hear the Dhamma with eager ears. Still, Bhaddali, I will teach you the Dhamma through the simile of the young thoroughbred colt. Listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir, the Venerable Bhaddali replied. So, stop here for a moment. So, the Buddha says, there were a few of you around when I gave the simile of the young thoroughbred colt. Do you remember? He said, no. You see this sati, the definition of sati is being able to remember what was said and done a long time ago. So this Venerable Bhaddali, he does not have that sati. His mind is not clear. That's why he does not remember. And the Buddha asked him, why don't you remember? He said, because I have not fulfilled the training. Has not followed the Buddha's instructions. The Buddha said, that is not the only reason. The Buddha said, I notice every time I'm teaching the Dhamma, this foolish man does not pay attention, does not engage with all his mind, does not hear the Dhamma with eager ears. So, when the Dhamma is being taught, you have to pay full attention. If you are interested in the Dhamma, if you have the affinity with the Dhamma, every time the Dhamma is taught, you will not talk, you will pay careful attention. There's some of you, when the Dhamma is spoken, you're all talking and all that. So the Buddha says that just like just now he gave the simile of the man swimming across the river Ganges. If a man is very strong, he's able to swim across the river Ganges, that is similar to a man when the Dhamma is taught, he pays full attention. And then the feeble man who is not able to swim across the Ganges, for the simple reason when the Dhamma is taught, he is not interested, he does not pay full attention. So listening to the Dhamma is extremely important in the Buddha's teaching, not only meditation, it has to be combined with listening to the Dhamma. The Blessed One said, Bhaddali, suppose a clever horse trainer obtains a fine thoroughbred colt. He first makes him get used to wearing the bit. While the colt is being made to get used to wearing the bit, because he is doing something that he has never done before, he displays some contortion, writhing and vacillation. But through constant repetition and gradual practice, he becomes peaceful in that action. When the colt has become peaceful in that action, the horse trainer further makes him get used to wearing the harness. While the colt is being made to get used to wearing the harness, because he is doing something that he has never done before, he displays some contortion, writhing and vacillation. But through constant repetition and gradual practice, he becomes peaceful in that action. When the colt has become peaceful in that action, the horse trainer further makes him act in keeping in step, in running in a circle, in prancing, in galloping, in charging, in the kingly qualities, in the kingly heritage, in the highest speed, in the highest fleetness, in the highest gentleness. While the colt is being made to get used to doing these things, because he is doing something that he has never done before, he displays some contortion, writhing and vacillation, but through constant repetition and gradual practice, he becomes peaceful in those actions. When the colt has become peaceful in those actions, the horse trainer further rewards him with a rubbing down and a grooming. When a fine thoroughbred colt possesses these 10 factors, he is worthy of the king, in the king's service, and considered one of the factors of a king. Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha here gives a simile of the colt. When he's being trained, he's being trained a step at a time. And in the beginning, when he starts something new, he's not used to it, he will try to rebel, contortion, writhing and all that. But gradually he gets used to it. Then he goes through different steps of the training, and eventually he's worthy of the king, becomes a king's horse. So in the same way, the Buddha is trying to say, when a person comes into monkhood, there's a lot of things that person is not used to. Eating, forsaking the dinner, forsaking the siu ye, supper, and not being able to go and see shows, do whatever you like. For a monk, he stays in a monastery, he cannot go anywhere. And when you are restless, you still cannot go anywhere. You just have to fight with your restlessness. Some monks, because of eating one meal a day, they have gastric problems, and they have to bear with it until they can at least subdue it. And then a lot of other things, there's so many precepts you have to uphold. A lot of things you're not used to it. It takes a long time to get used to it, just like the training of the colt. But when you get used to it, then you become, like here it says, the worthy of the king. Then the Buddha, similarly, the Buddha says, so too Bhaddali, when a monk possesses 10 qualities, he is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, and unsurpassed field of merit for the world. What are the 10? Here, Bhaddali, a monk possesses the right view of one beyond training, the right thoughts of one beyond training, the right speech of one beyond training, the right action of one beyond training, the right livelihood of one beyond training, the right effort of one beyond training, the right recollection of one beyond training, the right concentration of one beyond training, the right knowledge of one beyond training, and the right deliverance of one beyond training. When a monk possesses these 10 qualities, he is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of reverential salutation, and unsurpassed field of merit for the world. That is what the Blessed One said. The Venerable Bhaddali was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So here, this simile of the training of a monk. So this sutta is quite interesting. You can see here, if a person becomes an Arya, he would not hesitate to do what is required by the Buddha, he would not hesitate to follow the Buddha's instructions. So the Buddha says, if a monk follows the Buddha's instructions and practices, and then he can attain the jhanas, and after he attains the jhanas, then he can attain the knowledges, abhinya. Here mentioned 3 knowledges, and from there he can become liberated. It's nearly 1 hour. Maybe we stop here. Is there anything to discuss? Yes. Yes, this is one of the exceptions.
Then the other point is that quite interesting that the rain retreats in India was also observed by the external ascetics.
Actually, in the Vinaya books, this rain retreat was first observed by external ascetics, not by the Buddha's disciples. And then during the rains, the Buddha's disciples were walking all around. And then the lay people criticized the Buddha's disciples for walking around during the rains, because they said during the rains a lot of insects and worms, etc., they come up to the surface. Then when the monks walk around, they kill all these insects and worms, etc. And then because of their criticism, then the Buddha also instructed the monks to follow and keep the rains retreat.
On the Bhaddali, the Bhaddali seems to be an elder monk.
Yes, yes.
And looks like they have been undressing all the while, and yet the Buddha is so forbearing and tolerant of him.
Yes. Yes, we find in the Vinaya that the Buddha was quite tolerant. There were a lot of monks who do not fulfill the training. He did not chase them out.
This Bhaddali did not observe the not sleeping in inappropriate hours, so it's not such a big offense, or what, because Buddha did not.
Yes, it is not such a big offense, because initially the Buddha did not have this training rule, and the monks were going on alms round in the morning, in the afternoon, even at night. Later you'll see another sutta where this is mentioned, maybe the next sutta. The next sutta, Sutta 66, we'll go through tomorrow. The monks were going on alms round at odd hours, and that created problems. Sometimes in the darkness, they are standing there. When the monk begs for food, he's not supposed to open his mouth, not supposed to say anything. So in the next sutta you will hear about some lady. She was trying to get water from the well or something, and this monk was standing beside her, keeping very quiet. And when she turned around, she saw him. She screamed in terror, and after that scolded him. So that's why the Buddha didn't want the monks to go and beg at night and all that, frighten people and inconvenience people and all that. And also the Buddha himself was quite ascetic. We know before he was enlightened, he practiced all the ascetic practices to the extreme until he nearly died. And eventually he decided to take 1 meal a day, and he felt that it was enough. Actually, for a monk, 1 meal a day is a very good practice, because unless a monk does a lot of physical work, like building and all that, then a lot of monks, we don't do much physical work. Then 1 meal a day is just nice. In fact, for a lot of monks, if we take 2 full meals, you can easily get fat. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful. We don't go out of shape. So this eating precept is actually not a serious precept, because initially the Buddha allowed, but because the Buddha felt that by eating 1 meal a day it is sufficient, and a monk is slim, and that's good for meditation. If a monk gets fat, then he gets sleepy easily, sloth and torpor. So it is a good practice only, because it helps in the holy life. That's why the Buddha mentioned 1 meal a day. But later, because some monks could not follow it, then the Buddha relaxed a bit, and the Buddha said after the meal you can keep some food left over to eat later, but not after noon when the sun is at the highest. And actually the main point the Buddha wanted was that the monks should only go on alms round once, and not inconvenience lay people by going on alms round more than once a day. So a monk goes on alms round once a day, and then if he wants to eat twice, that is allowable, provided it's in the morning.
Okay. This suttas compiled or recited by Ananda is quite clear in sequences in the Sutta Nikaya. But the Vinaya is it an extract from the Sutta? Because the Sutta I see a lot of training books in there. So could it be extracted by Bhaddali?
No, definitely not. The Vinaya books contain a lot of things not mentioned in the suttas. You have to study it to know.
But these books are not available there.
Well, it is available. You just have to order it from either Pali Text Society or India.
Did the Buddha foresee the same problem?
Say again?
Did the Buddha foresee the same problem arising in the past?
The Buddha is not a man who uses his mind and thinks a lot. So the Buddha, he does not go and think this problem is going to arise or that problem is going to arise. He just let things go naturally. Not like us. Before something arises, we are already worrying. The Buddha does not worry about it. Whatever happens, the Buddha said, his mind is thus. Such, sometimes he translates it as such, unmoving. His mind is always unmoving. He's not disturbed by anything. Whatever happens, it's just like everything is like a dream only.
Could you just please refresh my memory the difference between the lowercase and the taints? Because that, in the first video, Guru mentioned that even if you don't get rid of the taints, you can still be born in a higher plane as long as you get rid of the fetters. So I just wanted that distinction again.
The taints, I would translate, actually the Pali word is asava. I would translate it as uncontrolled mental outflows. Arahant is described, is defined, Arahant or liberated person is defined as a kinna sava, one who has destroyed the asavas. And we know an Arahant, he has has destroyed the tendency for the six consciousness to flow. So that's why this word asava, I will interpret it as the uncontrolled mental outflows. That means the flow of the six consciousness. The tendency of the six consciousness to flow. So it is the ultimate. If you destroy the asavas, the taints, you have become arahant.
An example of that, to try to make it a little bit comprehensible in some small way, would that be, and I'm going to draw into an example of that would be something like that you're worrying about something in 6 months' time and your mind's completely trying to find solutions to that problem beforehand, as opposed to arriving to that date and then dealing with the problem. Would that be an uncontrolled outflow, for example?
Yes, like when the mind is disturbed, the consciousness flows more. There's a proliferation of thoughts. This proliferation of thoughts, you can consider it as the asavas. But ultimately, this asavas refers to the tendency of the mind to flow. The tendency of the mind to flow.
So sometimes during meditation, when you concentrate on those things, it just starts to wander off in a different direction. Is that
Yes.
an outflow?
Yes. But when a monk has attained the jhanas, the mind is focused. When the mind is focused, the asavas do not flow. The asavas do not flow in the state of the jhanas, because the mind is focused, concentrated. You are in control of the mind. So if you want to attain liberation, which is basically destruction of the outflows, you must be able to attain the jhanas, because when you attain the jhanas, you stop the outflows for that period you are in that jhana. If you are able to attain jhana for 1 hour, then at least you can stop the asavas for 1 hour. If you can attain for 2 hours, you can stop the asavas for 2 hours. And then only you have hope of permanently cutting off the asavas. If you cannot even cut it off for a short while, you absolutely have no hope of cutting it off permanently. That is why the vipassana meditation without the jhanas there is no hope of attaining liberation in the Buddha's teachings. Okay, shall we stop here?